guess for the final little bit.
Speed round.
Yeah, we'll try to speed this one up since we went way too long on
Yeah,
that.
we're at like an hour and some minutes.
Yeah,
so
this is going to be the longest episode ever,
Yep.
which they are increasingly are. But so
Every time.
so we'll get it right into this. A few other things that happened. Actually, we'll only talk about really like one other thing that's been going on this week, and then I want to finish this kind of on a different note than we normally do. But so first we'll talk about just the tactics of, and we touched on it earlier in the show, but the tactics of. We talked about the tactics of the Democrats in Congress and how they're trying to halt things. Now I want to talk about the tactics of the left as a base.
Right.
Because they seem to be organizing much like the Tea Party did. They're shutting Republican senators and Congress people down whenever they're
During
giving town halls and
yeah.
stuff. They're shouting at them. They're blocking Betsy DeVos from a school,
Yeah.
which like the last thing that needs to happen is for her to not have access to a school. Like she has no knowledge whatsoever about the
Right.
education system. Maybe get her in a school.
Let her sit in on a couple sessions.
Right. See how this whole thing works that we call public education.
Yeah, it's her job. I got an issue with that just because I did not like Betsy DeVos at all.
No,
I don't.
I don't think most reasonable
don't.
reasonable people don't.
Yeah. Well, at least the ones that I've come in contact with or seen online. But I still do have a problem with them literally surrounding her. And the other thing about this is because the way that the left has done this, where there are so many protests, they just get up there and they try to block someone. It's so inclusive to rioting that at any point, it would not have been. I would not have.
You and I have been at protests before, and
Yeah.
you know people call it mob mentality, and
Right, I only
and
punched like 12 people. You know.
Well,
No.
I'm not getting there yet, but I think mob mentality is sometimes used loosely, but
It's real, man.
Yeah, it is. And so we went through. A lot of people know the Westboro Baptist Church, the church of like 8 family members.
Hate gays and everyone else. They just basically hate everybody.
Yeah, they hate everybody, and they protest gay soldiers' funerals and
Right.
all this stuff. So anyway, they showed up at a local high school a few years back.
What high school was it?
It was Fort Zumwalt East.
Okay.
They showed up, they were scheduled to show up there. They didn't actually show up because
East was before my days. I was west all the way.
I know, mine too. But anyway, so they scheduled a protest because I think I can't remember what the issue was. I think
They were
East
protesting something.
was doing like a some type of LGBT inclusive club, like after school, like
apparently that pissed off the Westboro Baptist Church enough to show up and be like,
right.
Oh.
So they decided they were going to schedule an appearance at East with all their nasty signs of all their hateful rhetoric and whatever. So a bunch of people, local people, including myself, showed up to the counter protests, which I felt good about. Like I'm going to be on the opposite side of this hateful speech and whatnot. And while I do think that first of all, Westboro didn't even show up. So it was literally just a counter protest.
See, it worked.
So that was interesting, but it still made me feel good that people showed up for what I thought was the right reason.
Right.
And
I also would agree that is the right reason.
And I think mostly it is, but where mob mentality comes in to play, and this is a really this nobody fights, nothing happens bad at Fort Zumwalt East, so I don't want to allude to that, but what did happen, though, was a bunch of chants that had nothing at all to do with LGBT issues started happening because kids started skipping class to hang out on the sidewalk outside of their school and started yelling "Free the whales" and do all this stuff. And you saw how fast it took literally like 5 minutes, and the entire crowd went from standing together for a purpose to standing together to just stand together, and everybody's yelling their own thing and everybody's laughing and having a good time. And that's a harmless way that
until the rage comes in on whatever it is.
But so in that same respect, if you relate that to something that happened at Berkeley, or to relate that to something that happened in Washington D.C. on inauguration, which
or very
we've
well
already
could have
talked
happened to Betsy DeVos when she showed
yeah,
up.
Absolutely, because I think people sometimes show up for the right reasons, but because it's so easy to get off focus,
Right.
it turns into this mob thing. And so
they-
I think people need to be really careful.
Yeah.
And those
I think
Democrats
the left protests are just like I said, way too inclusive to rioting. Even when it didn't used to happen, like you said back in the day. Like the Westboro Baptist Church is easily something that people could riot over nowadays.
right.
But back in that day, it was a little bit different, and people were upset and everything. And I know the one thing that happened to the Westboro Baptist Church, they released all the names and the address, they doxed them and all that.
Yeah.
And I came out against that at the time as
You
well.
did. Yes.
Because, like, they're still people. We can
Yeah.
disagree with them, and we don't like them. I don't want them to come around, but they can if they want. I'm just going to call you dumb.
Right.
That's what I do.
I agree
So
with you
I didn't
on
like that. And like I said, too often now, whenever I'm looking at social media, when I look at NPR reporting on these things, it's just laden with people in support of other human beings being hurt just because they disagree
I don't agree
with them.
that. I know you've now thrown NPR under the bus a couple of times.
Fuck
in
you,
the
NPR. I don't like NPR.
In the last
so.
2 weeks, but I don't think that NPR. I think NPR is. They definitely have they have an agenda. I don't think it's as big of an agenda as conservatives would like to say.
A year
it
ago,
is.
I would agree with you. Not anymore. Not after this election. They chose their side. They made it very obvious.
Here's the thing. I don't think that you can stop what's going to happen on your comments page, whether you're whether you're NPR or the Devil's Advocate or Joe Schmo.
Yeah, and I'm talking
Facebook.
about the mentality of just the left themselves. They're too inclusive to looking the other way whenever these riots and this violence happens.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of
And
that too. When I first saw what was happening in Berkeley, even my first thought was like, this is an interesting way to handle this. But I assumed that I would hate Milo Yiannopoulos, and I don't like Milo.
I agree with 50%, but I disagree.
And I wouldn't even say that I agree with that much. But what I would say is he has a right to say it, whether or not I agree with it. And I'm not going to burn down the structure that he's being housed in.
And a big thing has to do also with the way he's doing it. So he's not telling his people, go beat the shit out of all these guys that are over here.
I will say, though, because I want... and this is dumb, and I shouldn't even get into this. Another tangent, just extending this show longer. But you said last week when we were talking about Berkeley that Milo does a lot of this as satire, and I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think that I think he uses wit, but I don't think. But he is presenting himself as an intellectual who is giving you a reason to think this way. The difference between that and you bringing up Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert is they're presenting themselves as comedians making fun of something.
Yeah, just because they're
Milo
on
isn't
cartoon.
doing that.
Yeah, just because they're on Comedy Central, whatnot. But let's be
their
honest.
Their career path
one of the
is
big
comedian.
Things,
They are stand-up comedians before they
but
had shows.
we gotta look at the facts. And even back in those days, whenever because I really didn't like Jon Stewart, The Daily Show, or the Colbert Report. I liked the Colbert Report a little bit more when it was going on. But even then, I would get upset because they were so one-sided. And, whenever you look at the facts, there were young people saying, this is where I get the majority of my news.
That's
and you're
because
clearly getting...
Here's
and
the
it's
thing,
bad
though.
on them
while
for doing
you're
that.
While you're spouting off about how CNN and NBC and CBS and Fox can't do their jobs, a lot of what comes from Jon Stewart's show, back when it was a show, was better reporting than...
they would
was
skew
better. It was skewed. Everybody skewed, and theirs was skewed more for a comedic take.
Well, it was more for a liberal take. With comedic properties to it. Which in my case is why I relate it to what Milo does, because it is a conservative skew with elements of comedy.
But Milo is like Michael Moore, who
he's
is
not
trying
pretending to be...
He's presenting you facts as an intellectual who knows something, so you should learn something from him. That's not what Jon Stewart is doing.
I don't see the difference as much as you do, just because it's on Comedy Central, because it's saying it's a comedy show.
It has nothing to do with
it's a
what
comedy
network.
News
you look
show.
You look at the content.
News show.
Right, so it's making fun of stories in the news.
But it's still presenting to you with the facts and then just skewing it to be more on their side. And really what it did was it painted that if you thought conservative, you were to be laughed at. That's what I had an issue with, is they just, he would just make stupid faces at the camera and be like, look how fucking stupid you are if you think this, and not present the whole evidence.
I think you ignore all of the Democrats that
laughed a lot about it. Yay.
No, they got set on fire on Jon Stewart's show. They did. There were a lot of
even
Democratic...
Trevor Noyer does that now. Like every now and again, I was watching during the election, and he would go at Hillary on the stuff that you
It
should
sounds like
clearly
you're only
go at
watching
here.
every now and again, because if you
Yeah.
watch it on
Well,
a
I
nightly
used to watch
basis,
it quite a bit back in the day.
you would
but
know then that Jon Stewart attacked Democrats not equally.
No.
But back in the day when you and I were watching it, was before Obama was in office, mostly.
Yeah, I did.
So you
for,
should
like,
be
the
attacking
first-
Republicans more. They're
Yeah.
in power.
Well, right. For the
Like-
first term of Obama, I was still watching, and,
So-
and like I said, now I watch Trevor Noah sporadically if I
Yeah,
get
I
a
don't
chance to.
I'm not as into that version of the show. But either way, that was a side tangent. I want to point out that because I listened to the show back and was like, I don't agree with that. He's not a comedian, and so now I still don't
Some of his
think
speeches
that,
almost
though.
end up like stand up. I mean, they're comedic in their presentation.
He's got wit, but that is not what that's not why you're there.
Yeah, he still laughs about
You're
it.
not there to laugh.
Trust me, man.
You're
watch his
at
speeches.
the Daily Show to laugh.
Right. Well, you go to the speeches trust. There's
That's
a lot
the
of
di-
laughing going on. So
yes.
people are there. They realize that's part of the,
I agree
the whole
that
thing,
he is
the whole
witty.
aesthetic.
What I don't agree with is the reason you're there, and that is where presenting Milo as satire, I think, is incorrect, because you don't show up to laugh. You show up to get informed. You
I don't
do
think so. I
show
think that
up.
they do show up to laugh. I don't think that as much they're showing up to be informed. I think it's the Milo. You know, he's showing up and he's gonna be speaking.
I think people
and you
show up
you
for
laugh.
different reasons. I think too that like it would be fair to say that racists show up to back themselves up.
Well, I would hope that there's not a lot of them. Richard Spencer. But,
Punch him in the face. I punch him week 2 right in a row.
I'll look to the other side on that one and be like, what?
What?
So.
We got called out on Facebook or YouTube about that. I don't care. I'll punch him again.
I
And I'll
really-
punch
yeah.
you too.
I can't get behind him, man. If you want to punch him, all right. Just don't send him floating down the river.
I'll punch the.
That's messed up.
I'll punch the commenter too. Call me out.
Suck.
Call Mitch out.
We'll call him out now.
No, but anyway, so that's, I mean, I don't know. That kind of just wraps up the whole thing. You touched on a few things there, but I think
She
that
should be able to do her job, and
Betsy DeVos should be able to do her job. The Republicans,
anyone should be able to do their job, even if you disagree with it. And they need to just. I know they're
But
not
it
gonna,
does-
they're not going to. They're
it
not going to
does-
calm down because I say calm down.
It does make me a little bit nervous because, like, I'm starting to doubt. You know, I've said it earlier in the show. I've always thought that, like, you were right, that this group of liberals that is really, really emboldened right now was the quiet or the vocal minority.
Yep.
But I wonder if they're the vocal majority. And if they are, then people like me need to just shut up. because
No, 'cause I think, like,
because the common goal that the reasonable left and the vocal crazy left have in common is we both don't want Donald Trump in 2020. And I think that the midterms will be a
One-term
good
president.
test. If the liberal movement is as united as it
Yeah, I
looks
think
right now,
we'll
then
see if it's
the
solidified or not.
midterm should flip.
Right.
So
I think that I wouldn't get too excited about it.
I
Just
don't-
like with Chuck Schumer, I think that he was all sad and defeated, and then the Women's March happened, and liberals decided we do have people that are actually on our side in numbers. I think that it still is the vocal minority, but we'll see. The midterms, I think, are a very good litmus test to see
right.
just how much dissentiment, I suppose, is with the liberal side.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So we'll see how that goes.
Right on.